Sounds good. Thank you, Kip. So as Kip mentioned, I'm from the National Weather Service State College. Going to talk a little bit about dew point bombs. Really fun talking about this right after a pretty significant winter storm, getting ready for spring at our office already. So going to go ahead and dig into it. Going to talk about a little bit about dew point bombs for those who are not as familiar with them. Some of this might be review for some of those in the room, but still good to talk about because this is one of the biggest hazards for fire weather in spring. And they're going to talk a little bit about our updates and a little bit of operations overview and give you guys some important links that are looking forward to the spring fire season. And then going to look a little bit ahead for the next couple weeks and for the beginning part of spring, some outlooks for that. So a little bit about the motivation for dew point bombs. I'd like to give a little bit of the background on why we do this. There are some spring days where typically our models and even our official forecasts from the Weather Service can badly overestimate relative humidity. As you all know, relative humidity is probably the most important aspect of fire weather in all general for forecasting. And it typically runs too high, which, whenever you guys are looking at the low end, that can be especially hazardous for you all. And actually, we actually got partner feedback from different fire weather partners that indicated whenever we actually send out our spot weather forecasts for your prescribed burns, that they would actually often divide our relative humidity forecast by 2 in order to sort of guesstimate the absolute worst case scenario. From our perspective, that couldn't be a worse thing for us, so we actually wanted to go through and look at why are we overestimating this, and we actually had multiple students, actually had a student spend a whole summer on a project looking for why this occurred. And we actually found that dew point bombs is sort of what we call them, and what these are significant dew point fall during the day. Typically, it's actually followed by a tiny little bit of a rise in the mid-evening hours. Significant in the realm of 10 degrees Fahrenheit or more drop in dew point, which absolutely can tank your relative humidity. And then it typically will rise upwards around 5 degrees, maybe even just a tad bit more. It's not necessarily associated with specific relative humidity thresholds, but it can almost always push the relative humidity down into your guys' critical fire weather categories. And it can actually often, if we're estimating somewhere around a 30, if a dew point bomb occurs, it could go even down into the 20s or even the teens, which absolutely can change your guys' perspective on everything. So what are we looking for whenever we're looking at this? And this is going to get a little bit into the meteorology of it. Of course, we are all doing this at our office, but if you guys, any for the meteorology people who are very interested in this. So what we're actually looking for is very dry air just above the surface. And it will start mixing down. What does it need to mix down? It needs weak or no inversion. What an inversion is just a slight temperature increase with height. Typically, as you go further up, the temperature will decrease. If you start to get this little bit of warming, it will actually allow for a little bit of instability, which will allow for air to start to mix down. And then once you get closer to the surface, this very dry air, with that weak to no inversion, will actually start to mix down towards the ground. On many dry days in this scenario, the dew point will dip 5 or more degrees and even upwards of 20 whenever we start getting into the more significant dew point bombs. The more instability there is, the more that will mix down. So typically whenever you have no inversion at all, that is typically whenever we will get more of our significant days. If there is a little bit of a weak inversion, that will limit the instability. That will not allow for as much of a mix. So for those that are interested in forecasting, this is some tools that we use, and even most of these are actually even available to you all as well for anybody who is interested in the weather. We have something called the SPC mesoanalysis, and if we're looking at weak inversion, there's actually a drop down under fire weather, and we start to look at these. If anything is above 7.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer, we're starting to look at weak or no inversion. And then whenever we look at dry air just above the surface, we look at LCL, LFC, mean relative humidity greater than 40%, and that will actually start to highlight areas in yellow and red. Whenever we start seeing those colors, that is typically cognizant of a dew point bomb getting ready to occur. Some models for those interested: HER, RDPS, which is actually the Canadian regional model, and the HREF MIN-RH, which is actually what we operationally use more often than not. Typically, you will actually find that this can overdo it more often than not, but as you can see, we can actually get relative humidities down into 10% and 15% on a dew point bomb day. This was actually taken from a pretty potent dew point bomb day across the southeastern portion of the area. And then forecasting best practices, we're still learning more about these. These are still changing. A lot of changes have been in the near term, but we are still looking into these, and we actually have one-pagers that our forecasters are available to use for all of that. So that was a little primer on dew point bombs. If you have any more questions, feel free to catch me after. I don't want to belabor it too much for those that are already here, but I'm more willing to talk to you all about it. So there are 5 Weather Service offices, going to go a little bit more of the agency. You guys are in State College's area right now. We cover a majority of the Commonwealth until you get upward in Crawford and Erie County. That will fall under NWS Cleveland. If you're further in the west, Pittsburgh will actually be for that area. Northeastern Pennsylvania is covered by the Weather Service office in Binghamton, New York, and the southeastern portion is in Mount Holly in New Jersey, and those are the offices that cover. The reason I mention that is because different offices do slightly different things. Different offices have different contacts. I am one of the contacts for State College. If you are in Mount Holly's area, you will reach out towards their representatives. So there's been a lot of reshuffling at the office, and I actually kind of want to mention this because there is a lot of change in our office currently. I don't know how many of you guys knew Bill Gardner. He was the fire weather focal point for over 20 years at our office, and he officially retired from the Weather Service after 32 years of federal service on December 31st. So that left a big hole in our fire weather leadership. Many of you guys probably know John Banghoff, who is currently in Houston, so that is why I am here. He is now the new primary fire weather focal point filling in Bill's shoes. I'm still a forecaster at our office, but I have actually started to step up, and I am the assistant fire weather focal point filling in John's position. So any contact with our office will likely go to John Banghoff first, and then me second. We are going to be the 2 main contacts since Bill has left very big shoes to fill. So some of you guys might also know our warning coordination meteorologist, Jonathan Guzman. He has been to a couple of these meetings, probably talked to a couple of you all in passing. He has officially accepted a new position to be the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service in Wilmington, Ohio. He's going to be moving closer to home in March 2026. So after March 2026, he will no longer be on the fire weather team, and it will just be limited to myself and John. So just wanted to sort of mention that the reshuffling going on at the office. That's a big update in our office, given that some of the points of contacts will no longer be valid after especially March. So some of you all know this. I'm not exactly sure the exact realm of people knowing that on February 1st, we discontinued Haynes Index and lightning activity level as fire weather forecast elements in our fire weather products. That includes the daily fire weather forecast that we put out twice a day, 3 times during the spring and fall fire seasons, and spot forecasts and your local fire matrices and any experimental fire weather products. We have started to discontinue those due to larger scope of them not being as useful, and there is a 5-minute video on this. I'm going to go and skip through that so that way I can go ahead and get through the rest. But if just as a heads up that the Haynes Index and the lightning activity level have been discontinued for the fire weather forecasts. And if you want a little bit more about that, the down and dirty, feel free to see me as well. There's a 5-minute video, but I want to go ahead and move forward because there is still quite a bit of stuff to get through with this. Not sure how many of you all are really big into the weather. We have actually changed, if you have read our area forecast discussion where we will actually mention critical fire weather days, we have actually changed our forecast discussion as of the beginning of the year. Typically what we would do is we would go in time scale, near term, next couple hours, maybe even a day if it's quiet weather. Short term, anywhere from where that near term ends to 2 to 3 days, 4 if it's quiet. And then the long term, which goes out to a week. Since the beginning of the year, we have changed to key messages, and we are mainly focusing on impacts. So an impactful key message that we would be reaching out to you all about would be Critical Fire Weather Day upcoming. In terms of those, key messages will have its own discussion. So if we are mentioning fire weather in any key message in our area forecast discussion, if you go down just a little bit to that key message, they are correlated. Key message 1 has its own discussion, key message 2 has its own discussion. You can read all about the meteorology of why we are forecasting critical fire weather days. I want to point this out because it is going to be slightly easier for those folks who are looking for the fire weather information and don't care about the next storm that is coming next week. You guys can just go down to the key message that is specific for you all, and you guys can actually just read through that information. The main thing that we also had is up at the top, synopsis. It was very meteorologically based, very could get in the weeds. We have actually changed that to a what has changed. We will typically mention specific things that have changed. Relative humidity has dropped by 10 to 15% due to a potential dew point bomb day. We will actually forecast this in the what has changed, and actually we are actually moving forward to actually message in that what has changed, mention what key message that actually applies to, so that way it has more coherent reading. You guys can go directly to what you guys need. You guys don't have to worry about what you guys don't need to worry about. So just a little bit of the watches and warnings for, this is pretty persistent through all 5 weather service offices across Pennsylvania. Fire weather watch is whenever we are issuing red flag warning criteria expected within the next 12 to 72 hours. What is red flag warning criteria? 10-hour fuels less than or equal to 10%, 20-foot winds greater than or equal to 20, and that can be sustained or gusts for over 2 hours. Relative humidity of less than or equal to 30%. No changes from previous years. This has been the same. So if you have gotten this training in the past, nothing has changed. We typically issue 1 to 2 of these per year. Last year we did not. We were lucky enough to not issue any, if you call it that. So we still do message with special weather statements for the more marginal fire days. We typically will actually look for on the day of an event when fuels are sufficiently dry, and either one of the 2 weather criteria that we met, the gusty winds or the low relative humidity, are met. We actually will collaborate fuels with the Bureau of Forestry. They are a lot more in tune with that than I will ever be. I'm going to be very honest. So we actually talk to them as they are more keen on that knowledge. Or we will also issue one if all red flag warning criteria are close. We have breezy but not completely gusty winds, relative humidity that is not at below 30 but getting close, or if the fuel moisture is 12% or less, once again we coordinate with the Bureau of Forestry. What do these look like? These will be issued by whichever of the 5 offices. Typically we'll mention elevated risk of wildfire spread. That is typically the main thing that we try to message in that, and we will try and give a time frame, afternoon, evening, and where it is at geographically. Spot weather forecast page. Many of you guys have seen the new page. We've actually gotten some questions about submitting observations. So we actually wanted to sort of talk about this, and I will sort of give you the basis of why you might want to do this if you guys are ever out on a burn. So at the spotweather.gov, we actually don't have any in Pennsylvania over the last week, so I had to pull some from Maryland and West Virginia in those areas. If you ever go to this website, you will actually find the name of the burn, the type, and all kinds of information, WFO and all that. Doesn't really matter for the WFO. You can go in where it says submit obs, and you will get this little screen off to the right where you can actually put in the site, the date and time of the observation, and all kinds of information that you guys will have with that. Your probably number one question is always, why would I want to do this if you guys are able to? Say that we have an exact same weather picture that comes from the day. We have high pressure and you guys are burning in the same area on the same next day. Sometimes persistence might be a winning forecast. If nothing much changes with regards to the atmosphere and nothing changes with regard to where fronts, high pressure, low pressures are, we're in a pretty stagnant weather state. We can actually look at yesterday's forecast, and that might be a good starting point for tomorrow. And we can actually look and make minor edits based on what might have changed slightly as we go through that. So I wanted to give the little outlook on how to submit observations and why it might be important for your local office to do that. Not sure how many of you guys are in this. We actually have a fire weather chat. We will do weekly fuel moisture check-ins during the spring, fall season. All 5 of the offices that cover Pennsylvania are actually in this, and we will actually usually give a brief weather update for the week. We also coordinate the fuel fire weather concerns with the moisture status, and you can sign up at this QR code. And if you have any questions, I can also give you that link at the end of the talk as well. Messaging fire weather days, we typically try and do this on our various channels. We will highlight things on our website. We will social media it. We will also, whenever we are getting into more extreme days, we will actually send fire weather briefings to an actual fire list that we will do. If you are not on this list and you would like to be, you can actually touch base with me or John Banghoff via email, which I also have at the end of this. We will send these out for fire weather watch, red flag warning. We will always send it in the morning, usually between 5 and 6 a.m. If we are noticing changes, potential dew-point bomb day, that is becoming more efficient, more likely, we will actually issue an optional afternoon update. Some important links, briefing page. This is the one-stop shop for all hazardous weather, including fire weather information. If we have a DSS briefing out for fire weather, anything along those lines, it will be on here, weather story, and any relevant forecast details that we have out. If we have any products out, it will also be on this page. So if we have a red flag warning, it will be on this page. Fire weather dashboard. This is a dashboard that is actually created out of the weather forecast office out of Duluth, Minnesota. You can actually go in here and you can drop a point exactly where your prescribed burn or any of your incidents are, and it will give you all the fire weather information you want. Temperatures, relative humidity, winds, gusts, cloud cover, which is also very important, and any of those, mixing height, ventilation rate, anything along those lines. And you can also have an hourly graph if you're more interested in that, if you don't like a big table with a bunch of numbers. We also have a fire weather tab on our website, which actually will look at fire danger maps from the Bureau of Forestry. And we will also have all kinds of maps that outline the next 3 days of relative humidity, wind gusts, and sustained winds. And you can actually look at our different raw site data in there as well. We have, I believe this is the 3rd year of Fire Weather Awareness Week. We message fire weather pretty much all week, chosen week. Preliminary dates for it are March 23rd to 27th. I want to be very honest, these might shift. We try to shift these depending on when closer to fire season. If we are in late March and we have 2 feet of snow on the ground, might not be the best time to sort of be pushing that information out, maybe get a little bit closer to fire season. So preliminary dates are March 23rd to 27th. Typically we will touch base with all the partners and let you guys know just in case. Whenever we start posting these, you guys can share any of this on any of your content, social media channels. If you have any questions or any, qualms with what is on there, we can also always touch base with those too. So going to look at future outlooks. Going to look a little bit in the past and then going to look a little bit to the future because everybody wants to know what's going to be happening the next couple months. And even this weekend, more than likely. So looking back to 2025, pretty much we had bouts of above average, bouts of below average, pretty much what you would expect. The main thing I want to take home is towards the end of the year, we started dipping a little bit below average, except for one, I'd say pretty significant warm up in the middle of December. But now as we get back into this year, we are trending mostly below average. Cold air is just going to continue for the next couple weeks. As we get into maybe late next week, we might be looking at a pattern change. I'm not going to belabor that too much because weather forecasts will likely change before next week. What everyone more than likely cares about is the precipitation. Just being honest, below average precipitation across most of Pennsylvania for October through December. Northwestern Pennsylvania got a little bit more lake effect snow, as many of you guys that might be up there are aware. It's the only area of the state that is really above average in terms of percent of normal precipitation. Month to date, even though we just got upwards of a foot in a lot of places in Pennsylvania, we're still below average with regards to precipitation. Maybe northwestern Pennsylvania tips a little bit above average, and maybe a little bit areas of far eastern Pennsylvania. Mentioned the snow depth. The recent winter storm brought upwards of 2 feet in Somerset County to portions of Pennsylvania. No short-term melt expected. Just being blunt, cold temperatures continue at least through until we get into February and even into the first week of February. So not expecting any of that to sort of melt into and help out the ground state. As I mentioned, upcoming cold with near below zero low temperatures through the end of January. Slight chances of precipitation today and as we get into next week, but not looking at a lot of precipitation, which will more than likely just belabor drought conditions. Current drought conditions across most of central Pennsylvania, portions of northwestern and southwestern Pennsylvania, most extreme across the south central and far eastern portions of Pennsylvania. Next week, looking at below, and the next couple weeks, looking at below average, especially as we get into February 4th to 10th, we're looking at pretty good chances for below average temperatures. Precipitation, bad news, we're looking at below average precipitation in those timeframes as well. As we get into next week and the following week, actually this is more the seasonal outlooks. I forgot to change those, so my apologies. We're looking at near average temperatures, and we are looking at potentially a pattern change as we get into February, March, and April at maybe trending towards above average precipitation. So maybe a little bit of relief towards our drought conditions, but we'll have to see the actual magnitude of those changes. So with that, that is getting towards the end of the presentation. I actually breezed through that second half, so I will take any questions for you all, and contact information is also up here.
All right, we have time for a few questions. If you would, please do wait till I run the mic to you. Right now we're down to one. So show of hands, any questions?
Can you use delta T as a predictor of a potential bomb, and what level would that be?
Typically, we haven't used delta T. We typically actually just look at the dry air above and then the temperature inversion. We have not had any talks in our office of doing delta T. It might be something for our office to look into, and that is something that we will have to look into. But at this time, we have not used delta T, and I don't know of any talks on potentially using that, but that is something we can definitely look into. Meteorologically, I don't know the exact utility in it at this point, but it is something that I would be interested in looking at more. So at this point, I don't have a direct answer, but we do not use it in current operations now.
All right, more questions? Oh, come on, I know you guys have more than that. We all are running spot weather forecast, anything. I'm sure you will have a few people approach here afterwards. They don't want to ask right now, but with that, let's go to our next speaker.